of your community running like a well-oiled machine? You know, everything's just going smoothly. Have you ever wondered if you could do that without you ever present? That's what we're going to talk about next. Maybe it's controversial, maybe it's exciting. Can you run your community without you needing to be there all the time? And we have a wonderful person all the way from Australia to tell us if that's possible. Paz Pisarski is coming to the stage right away. She is the co-founder of the Community Collective. They have over 700 members and people they've supported around the world in over 18 countries. Their community reach is much bigger than that even, but it's wonderful that we have her here today. Paz is also a classical guitarist. She makes relaxation music. She's a multi-award-winning community builder. And, woo, yes, Nikki, she is here with us today. Please welcome Paz Pisarski to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, all the way from just around the corner, just from Australia. It's a short 16-hour flight here today. I didn't arrive this morning, but I want to just quickly get a huge round of applause for our MC, Margot Miller. Please give it up. I hope you had a beautiful break, met some lovely people. But welcome, Wamajika, Kia ora, Aya, and Bienvenida. I am so excited to be here today to speak to you about how your community can run without you. Now, not to write yourself out of a job or to just go on a permanent vacay, but to actually ensure that you're not the bottleneck for the success and the impact that you seek to make with your members and the business. And so today I'm going to walk you through a lot of different stories and some frameworks. But first, we have a ritual back in Australia. Whenever we start a talk, we do an acknowledgement of country. So if everyone may take part in just a breath, I would just roll your shoulders back. We're all just going to take a deep breath in and just a deep breath out. And just on behalf of all of us, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land back in my home country that have made me being here possible, and also the space in which we're gathering here today. I'd also like to acknowledge back in 2023, when I sat down at an event, and I sat down next to someone who was called Kelly. And I said to Kelly, "What's your focus this year?" And Kelly said to me, "Well, Paz, I actually am about to leave on a trip of a lifetime. I'm about to go away in 6 months. I'm taking my kids out of school. My husband and I are co-founders. We run a business together, which also is a community that supports people to publish books. And we want to work only 20 hours. I said, "Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. 20 hours a week. Like, I would dream of working that much." She said, "No, Paz, 20 hours in the whole year." This was my face, going like, "Oh, like, how do you do that?" And she said, "Well, do you want to help me?" I said, "All right, let's do it." So Kelly and I proceeded to work together over the next 6 months to understand how she could have her business and her community run without her as she went on the trip of a lifetime for 12 months. And what I want to walk you through today is all of the frameworks and the process that we went through with Kelly. I called her the other week and she said, "I'm happy to share it." And so basically, I also want to do a quick check-in with all of you. Now, I'd love to see a raise of hands if I gave you a call this afternoon and I said, "Hey, Nikki, you've just won the lottery. You have a 12-month, all expenses paid for trip around the world. It's starting in the Canary Islands and you have to leave tomorrow. Can I get a raise of hands if you could say yes to this trip and your community still run without you?" Oh my God, I love this. Can we get these people up on stage to run this session? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, all right, there's a couple hands. There were a lot of hands not raised. And really this litmus test is just a bit of a check-in as to how are the processes, the people, and the self-sustaining nature of your community right now. And this is actually a question that has guided me in my own personal journey as a founder and a community builder. Back in 2021, we ran a meetup with two co-founders, myself, Melia Rayner, and Jala Alex. And together we brought together 17 community builders in the startup space, running accelerators, incubators, that type of nature, to connect. It was during this thing called COVID. I don't know if you've heard about it, just a pandemic that happened. And Melbourne was actually the second most locked down city in the world. I mean, I know it was tough for everyone, but we were second behind Buenos Aires of hundreds of days of consecutive stage 4 lockdown. Obviously, there was a lot of challenges. Community builders were lent on for a lot of support. But what we didn't realize after running this meetup, in between some of the lockdowns, it was all legally legit, I promise, was that it would go viral. And not like the virus kind, Australia didn't start COVID, but basically the kind where all of these people started sharing our Airtable registration link left, right, and center with hundreds of community builders in Australia to join this free meetup community. So myself and our 2 co-founders were running it for a year amongst full-time jobs, and it grew so big that in 2022, I personally quit my job, registered the Community Collective as a company, and to date, we've been running it for 3 years as a business, which has grown to over 12,500 people across 18 countries. And thank you. And this is a C for community, not cult, just to get that clarified. And we've also been able to run 8-week programs across all different types of industries for people to learn how to build a community strategy. But when I quit my job, someone said to me, Paz, this thing's got legs and it's growing. How are you going to make sure that you're not going to burn out? How are you going to make sure that you're not going to be a bottleneck for the impact that you seek to make in the world? I was like, whoa, that's a great question. She said, how is this going to run without you? And this isn't just about creating processes that operate efficiently. This isn't just about creating a self-sustaining community that has members and leaders that actually self-organize. This is about cultivating a mindset every day that helps us make decisions that are benefiting the long-term and longevity of your community and the business. Now, what was fascinating is that mindset has helped us start in Melbourne and then actually transcend to countries that I haven't even been to. But this community is not about me. And this community is also something that is so strong and dear to my heart. But this mindset of actually understanding how your community can run without you was something that we realized that Seth Godin also shared. And we interviewed Seth in our program last year, and he shared this same knowledge. And we said to Seth, well, how do you think about having things run without you? And he recently launched a book, This Is Strategy. Has anyone read This Is Strategy? Okay, highly recommend. It's a great book. It's about strategy, if you didn't know. And really, he created a book launch, and he gathered people, created processes, and established a plan to have hundreds of meetups run without him to launch this book. And this is a fantastic approach to understand how to actually think about something that is going to run outside of what you are capable of doing just as a human. Now, when I sat down with Kelly, we needed to lay down some foundation. And we walked through the P-cubed model. Now, this doesn't stand for like Paz cubed, even though I probably looked like this slide with all the orange. But I basically walked Kelly through this P-cubed model, which is similar to how if you were going to plant a garden, you would establish soil before planting any seedlings. Well, when you're going to actually run a community of a large size, you really want to make sure that you have the foundation in place. So the P-cubed model starts with people. Obviously, you need to be the right person for the job. You need to have an incredible team around you. You also need to make sure that you have the right members and leaders in your community to help you. So we sat down with Kelly and we mapped out the different types of people in the team and in the community as step 1. We then wanted to make sure that we had the processes in place. We're talking tech, operations, automations, and making sure that we are actually efficient in nature. And even in my own experience, having people and processes sounds like a great combo, but you can end up a little bit like Frodo getting lost and going around circles in The Lord of the Rings when you have these 2 things, but you're missing the third. Can anyone guess what the third P is going to be? We've got people. Potatoes, that is it. We have potatoes, which is also called plan. So that's so good. We've planted our potatoes in the garden, and we have a clear plan to actually establish what we are trying to achieve in the longevity. We're thinking about the business goals and the member outcomes and finding that sweet spot in the middle. So Kelly and I established this foundation. We were pretty happy about that, but there was a lot more work to do. Now, it's interesting. Usually when you're taking someone from step A to step B, you have an expectation that it's going to be this linear process. Has anyone ever set a goal and thought it would happen a little bit easier than it did? Any raise of hands? For sure. Okay, yeah, a lot of us here. I've been in this boat. But in reality, there's usually a lot of ups and downs, a bit of a roller coaster ride, and a lot of learnings that takes place. A bit of failure, a bit of bombing, as Jono said it. But really thinking about the expectation that we set of ourselves, and once you embrace that going from A to B is not going to be a linear 10-step, here's my framework process, and we actually lean into the chaos. Now, at the Community Collective, we love chaos because every community has an operating system. And chaos in our mind is when you're building something with intentionality and you're actually establishing something that can outgrow you. We probably won't be in our job forever. I probably won't be running the Community Collective forever. So how do we actually take ourselves outside of that equation? And so at the end of this talk, I would love all of us to be falling in love with chaos. So I actually want all of us to say this out loud. How this is going to work, I'm going to count down from 3, and then we're all going to say we love chaos. We're going to do it? Yeah. Okay, we're going to do it. All right, 3, 2, 1. We love chaos. Amazing. Give yourselves a round of applause. That was some good energy. We'll get better. We'll try it again at the end, but I love it. I love it. So to understand chaos and build a community that has an operating system, in order to actually set something up to run without you, I want to walk you through Coda. So is anyone a musician here? Does anyone play music? Okay, cool, beautiful. We'll play some violin later. Love that. So I started playing classical guitar when I was 4 years old. This is Paz, when she was 4. And basically, we learned the Suzuki method of learning an instrument. And in that method, we had to learn sheet music or notation. And there was this term called coda. And I asked my teacher, Zia Reed, and I said, Zia, what's coda? She said, well, Paz, coda is an Italian music term. I said, that's great. What does it do? So when you play a song, you'll start at the top, and you play it all the way through to the very end. And then the second time round, you're going to do it differently. And so the second time round, you're actually going to play it a little bit differently and actually skip the ending. You're going to play just to the coda, and then you're going to make it more efficient and end faster than you did the first time. Now, us community builders, we can learn something from coda and this musical term. Because if you've ever been in a job and you're completing a task and you've realized that you're doing this task for a second, a third, a fifth, 10th, millionth time, and it's fairly manual, and you think to yourself, wow, it's probably a more efficient way of me doing this. And I could probably delegate this to someone. I could probably make it more automated, but that seems like it might take a little bit of time. So I'm just going to do it the same way that I've always done. Has anyone ever had that thought of just making something more efficient? Yeah. So Coda is actually a framework to combat that thought. That thought is our enemy. Because what we want to do is, yes, if we're going to do something for a second time, we want to make sure it's more efficient and it's more values aligned. So let's walk through Coda, and if you're ever going to do something for a second time, I want you to think about how you can cut, own, delegate, and automate. So Kelly and I sat down and we said, great, we've got our people, we've got our processes, we've got a plan to work 20 hours in a year and have this community run without her. The first step was to understand all of the different elements that Kelly was managing. So we wrote down all of the different projects, all the different programs in the community, all the members, and then all the responsibilities that her as a founder and community builder were responsible for, and the team. And then after that, we wanted to go through the Coda framework. So the first element is to cut. And basically, the ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak. Understanding what not to do is just as important as understanding what you should be focusing on. And so once Kelly and I had this huge list of all the projects, all the responsibilities, we walked through this matrix. Now, Ben Davies, incredible community builder back in Australia, is one of the advisors of the CC, and he also built the early stages of Canva and Dovetail at the communities there. And he walked me through this matrix. It's called the Ow, How, Now, Wow. It's really fun to say. And basically, this matrix is where you take everything that you are actually working on and plot it here. Now, a lot of you might have done this in your roles, but in this perspective, we have a clear outcome that we're trying to achieve. Now, we sat down and we worked out that there were definitely things in this quadrant here that were high effort, highly manual, and that were low impact. They were not serving us in achieving our goals for the business and delivering value for our members. So we sat down and said, all right, well, we're going to have to cut some of those things. I've even personally had to make decisions, and this is a framework that I use every 6 months to audit my own workload and the team's workload. And within the community, there are lots of programs that happen. There are different events and conferences and gatherings. And that meetup community that we started back in 2021, we actually continued running that until 2023. But what we found was that numbers started to dwindle. Engagement was low. There weren't many new members signing up. We just launched an 8-week program, and a lot of people joining that instead. And so we said, wow, this is still taking a lot of time, onboarding speakers, running meetups, hosting all the sessions. And so we actually evaluated, is this actually still valuable for our members? And what did we find out? We actually decided to close that entire free meetup community. Now, I'm not saying you should close your communities to have them run without you, even though that would be a very efficient way of achieving that outcome, but it's not the purpose of today. But we realized that running this free meetup community wasn't actually helping our members achieve their outcomes and was taking a lot of resources from our team. It can feel really daunting and scary to actually cut something, but what this allowed us to do was to actually double down on what was working, our cohort programs at the time. And then what happened? All of our members started joining the other programs, and we saw a lot of value and impact happening. Another framework that I like to use, this is like this really high-tech functionality in Australia. It's called a retro. Just drew this at home and took a photo of it. It's not AI. But basically, we walked through a decision-making framework. So actually understanding what you should cut is just as important as understanding what you should keep. But if you have a lot of things on your plate and you need just some clarity to walk through that, definitely take a photo of this. This is my own decision-making process to understand if this is still values aligned. Do I actually have capacity right now to own this? And will this impact our members or generate revenue, or will I enjoy this task or responsibility? And based on these different outcomes, we can understand if we should politely decline, not even own things at the start if they're coming in inbound, or what we should keep and say yes to. So once we know what we should actually cut, we need to understand what we need to own. Obviously, Kelly had 20 hours in a year. That's not even 2 hours a month. So we need to understand what is going to be in that exact time. Now, to understand what to own, I want you to remember, do what brings you joy, and your purpose will unfold. Your purpose being the most important responsibilities that you could actually handle that will deliver outcomes and actually move the needle on your goals and your vision. We've established a plan. We need to make sure that we're actually sticking to it. So we mapped out all the different responsibilities, and we found that there were a lot of things in this quadrant, the how quadrant. And these were the elements that were high impact. These are the things that are changing lives, changing outcomes, and delivering results. And this was also high effort. There was a lot of strategic thinking, there was a lot of brainstorming, problem solving that was involved, and we actually realized that this is what Kelly loved doing. So this is where we wanted to focus our time on. But in order to understand what to own, you also have to have that plan and strategy in place. Obviously, you're going to take diligent care in writing out your goals and your metrics. And then we wanted to make sure that Kelly stayed on track every week throughout the whole year and just the rest of running a business. So we created a framework to basically create a recurring calendar invite in our calendars every Monday that reminded us of our goals or our vision and our mission. Had a link to the strategy. We've got the quarterly rocks or OKRs or KPIs, whichever framework that you use. And we wanted to make sure that then this week we owned the 3 tasks and projects that mattered the most. So then we could make this decision. If you have your phone, honestly, just create a recurring calendar invite for Monday morning, have a bit of a coffee date, and do this process if you don't have one already. Because what this then outlines is, okay, great, we have a clear goal. We want to start with the end in mind, as Jono put it, and Steven Kavoy. And we want to actually work back as to what are the different tasks that will help us achieve that goal. Then we want to look at this task list and go, great, where do I fit in? I feel I'm like orange. I feel like I'm all of these right now. But we want to make sure that your time is spent best on what you love doing and what you're actually good at. And so a great framework to understand what you should own, what your team should own, is the GWC. Has anyone read Traction by Gino Wickman? It is an incredible model, a couple of people. It's an incredible book. They have a model called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And GWC is a fantastic element to actually use in your day-to-day. So let's say we looked at a goal, we have all these different tasks, we want to understand who should own them, and it should be me. We took Kelly through this and we understood, all right, GWC stands for get it, want it, and have capacity for it. To get it is to understand and also have the right knowledge in order to execute this task effectively. To want it, you actually have a desire. This is something that brings you energy, not just drains you and makes you exhausted all the time. And do you have capacity for it? Do you have the skills and the time and the energy? If you are a yes, ding, 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 across all three, then you get to own it. But perhaps let's say that you are across all three of them, then this might be a time when we should delegate. To delegate is to identify people that you trust, whether in your team, they might be advisors, mentors, other founders, members, ambassadors, and really understanding what they are destined to do and how they can contribute. Because if you want to do a few small things right, please do them yourself. But if you want to do a great thing and also make a big impact, learn how to delegate. We sat down with Kelly and understood that we actually had a gap in the team. So we went and hired a community lead. This community lead is still with the expert author community about 1.5 years on. And we understood, okay, how can we actually delegate the elements that are high impact and low effort? Now you might go, Paz, why low effort? Maybe I want to be in that quadrant. I'm so glad you asked. Well, to understand how to delegate correctly, it feels really empowering when you get a new task that is going to move the needle on your goals and it's easy to do. This person's going to gain confidence, they're going to actually boost morale and actually stay with the company for a lot longer. And so we created 3 different kind of delegation tools that really set this community lead up for success. And MAP stands for mission, actions, and plan. So when you are delegating, either to a team member, perhaps you have ambassadors or chapter leads, you want to actually explain the why, the mission behind what this is here to achieve. A great framework that we use is just a good old project brief, a Google Doc, where we outline exactly the behind the scenes of this project, the problem, who it's for, and this actually empowers the person. It's not just, hey, go run an event. It's, hey, we want to run this event because this is going to lead to XYZ outcome. Then we want to make sure that we are setting this person up for success when we delegate and actually writing out the actions together. Not just off you go, here you go, throw in the deep end, try swim, but actually write out the way that you would approach it, ask them how they would approach it, and you sign off on it together. We love a good old-fashioned how-to guide. This is a how-to guide I gave to our community lead the other week to write emails before our cohort sessions in Luma, a great events platform. And basically, we wanted to outline the very clear steps. Here's a quick how-to guide and a video, and then here's the email template. Now, if you listen to anything in this whole talk, please just stop what you're doing. This is so important to do this every day, just as you are delegating tasks. You then build the playbook of how your community operates, ensuring not just a consistent experience for all your members, no matter who is delivering that, but you're actually building the entire diagram of how this community operates. And so when you leave or you are actually just sick for a day, you can actually hand someone a how-to guide very quickly as opposed to having to onboard. I had a team member just go on a sabbatical for a year. She had no handover to do whatsoever because we had all these how-to guides in our Google Drive to start off with. Then, of course, you want to build a plan of how the delegation is going to work, deadlines, timelines. We like to put things in Airtable and make sure that then all the project briefs, how-to guides are saved in one central source that is our truth. So that brings us to the very last element of CODA. We have cut, we've owned elements, we've delegated and brought up leaders to contribute, and now we want to make sure that we are automating. There's a lot going on with AI, there's a lot of incredible tech out there, and we want to make sure that we are leveraging it. But the thing to remember here is that automation is fantastic, but as long as you know exactly where to put the machine. I'd like all of us, just if you are able, just place a hand on your heart or your chest and just make a commitment right here and now that we vow to ourselves as community builders to ensure that we are leveraging technology, but we're not going to automate the human connection that makes our spaces so valuable. Fantastic. You can give someone a high five. Big round of applause to yourselves. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Love the orange lanyard. It's beautiful. And so really thinking about how you can leverage your existing tech stack. I love the rule of thumb. If you are thinking about automation, look at your current tech stack. Okay, what am I using? How does Trello do this? What's Asana doing? What's Discourse got? And understand how you can leverage the features, send them an email. And then if you can't do any of the capabilities and use the features of your current tech stack, then you can obviously look outwards. If you do, we go back to our trusty matrix and we want to look at the low impact and low effort elements in order to automate those. And why is this called the now quadrant? Well, if not now, then when? There's a saying in Spanish called mañana. And a lot of people might go, all right, when are you going to run that event? When are you going to do that? And they go, mañana, mañana. It's like tomorrow, tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. And if it's not today, it's never. And so please build a habit. Just do this 1% every day. Remember that thought that was the enemy? I'll automate eventually. I'll add it to my list that I'll do at some point. This slows down progress and makes it very difficult to actually build something that's self-sustaining. Another rule of thumb that I learned from Melly Arena at Blackbird Ventures is that if you catch yourself doing the same manual task every five times every month, then find a way to automate it then and there. Something that we had at the Community Collective was during our cohort programs, we were email introing members. We were like, Tanya, meet Sally. Dave, meet Sally. And everyone's meeting Sally. And we basically wanted to make sure that they made new connections, but it became very, very manual. So we actually use Intros AI. The team's here today. Definitely, love that. Round of applause for Intros AI. I love those guys. And go say hi, give them a peace sign, said Paz sent you. And basically, we use Intros AI to basically automate all of the different introductions for all of our members, and we connected hundreds of people across 12 countries in minutes. And so really, this brings us to the last piece of advice that I want to leave with you, is you can walk through the Coda framework, and you can dream big and have an incredible plan with processes and people, but just remember to start small, but just start. To help you start, I wanted to create a template for you that has all of these frameworks. You can scan this QR code now, and basically it will walk you through how to set the vision, how to establish where you are now, do the audit, walk through Coda, and hopefully have your community run without you to actually ensure that you're not a bottleneck for the success that you and your members deserve. But wait, before we leave, what happened to Kelly? God, I wouldn't deprive you of that end of the story. So grab your popcorn. I called up Kelly, and we heard about the end of the trip, and her and her family got back at the start of this year. They took a whole 12 months off. They took their kids out of school. They went to 10 countries, Canada, America, and they came back earlier this year, and the community and business is still operating. This is Kelly. Look up the expert author community. Say hi. She's an absolute legend. But thank you so much for leaning into some chaos. For the last time, I'd like us to all scream, "We love chaos," on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1. We love chaos! You! Thank you all so much. I will see you soon.